Alicia Canady, Alissa Canady, Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor.
So what issue is most important to you as we head into November?
I mean, all of the issues right now are important, particularly dealing with this global health pandemic, COVID-19, and making sure that we are managing it the best way possible to ensure that we're able to do our best to mitigate the impact to the economy and to education. What's important to me also is dealing with violent crime in our urban cities throughout the state of Missouri, and being proactive as we look at ways to reduce violent crime. And more importantly, dealing with the economic and education. We've got to, and I know I said that with COVID, but it goes without saying again, my 3 areas of focus are dealing with the health disparity in the state and increasing accessibility to affordable health care, investing in communities in the forms of education, economic development, and addressing urban violence. So those 3 things.
So what do you believe, sorry, it muted on me. What do you believe we are doing wrong right now, if anything, and what will you do differently if you win?
Wrong? I can't say that here's what I will say where the areas of opportunity are. When you're in a crisis and when you're dealing with national catastrophes of any kind, the number one thing has to be the safety and welfare of the residents, the taxpayers, your constituents, however you want to qualify them. So whether it was a hurricane or earthquake, what do we need to do to ensure the welfare and safety of our residents? I believe right now the most important thing we can do is to adopt a comprehensive strategy on how to mitigate COVID spread, which is a mask mandate. That's number one. I think in addition to that, we have to look at the economic impact and how are we making sure folks are able to stabilize their incomes and their lifestyles, whether that's through the moratorium on evictions, the stay on foreclosures, making sure people are not food insecure during this time, whether because they're not in school or because they aren't employed, and then making sure that they have access to affordable quality health care. I think those are that's probably 4 or 5 things we've got to focus on right now. That has to be the priority. And then as we work alongside of that towards the long term, what does the recovery look like? What are our needs going to be? Where are our shortfalls right now in the budget, and how are we going to address those challenges, and making sure we're making policies that are going to anticipate all those variables down the line.
So what do you think, I know I just asked you what was important to you as we head into November. What do you believe is important to the voters?
The voters want leadership they can rely on. What is their confidence in your ability to lead effectively, consistently? Are you going to be present? Are you going to be concise and decisive? Are you going to be proactive in providing resources? Or are you going to be, a spectacle? Or are you going to be missing in action, like we've seen from this current administration? Either the information we've received has been somewhat inept or uninformed, or just totally absent. The current Lieutenant Governor has the opportunity to advocate for seniors and veterans and has been silent on that issue for the last 7 months while they've suffered and have revealed that's probably the most vulnerable population. Over 600 deaths have occurred in our long-term care and assisted living facilities without much of a peep from the chief advocate by state statute. So voters want someone who's going to be actionable, someone who wants the job, who's committed to the work of the job, and not just handing out awards, and being mindful of the needs of today.
I know you've touched on COVID-19 quite a bit, but I have to ask this question anyway. What do you believe is top of mind for voters right now? Economy, racism, or COVID-19? Which is the biggest concern, and how would you address it?
It just depends. It really depends on which constituency you're talking to. Most people, COVID will be in their top 3 for sure. If you're talking to a young Black man in Missouri, racism is probably at the top of his list, or the economy, you know, his ability to provide for himself and his family. So I would say for voters who are financially stable, I would say COVID and healthcare at the top of their issue. For people who are financially insecure right now, or a minority or a class that's already was disadvantaged, their concerns are economy and racism, and dealing with those challenges because it's in their face while they're navigating with COVID. So again, like I said, it's in the top three, just depending on who you're talking to, how they're going to prioritize it.
How would you reassure voters that you will fight for what they want?
Good question. Well, my professional record, which is public, has been me doing just that, advocating on behalf of residents and taxpayers, not corporate interests. That's who put me in office. That's who I advocate policies and access for. And I've even found myself in trouble a few times standing up for the little guys, whether it's about renaming the street name and going against the will of the voters, or using taxpayer dollars to invest in luxury apartments against the will of the disadvantaged school children. I have taken those political positions because they were the right thing to do on behalf of my constituents.
Why run for office?
It's a very good question, particularly in a pandemic. I was encouraged to get in this race from the Democratic leadership because I had just had a very strong showing in the mayor's race, and I ran that campaign with such passion and conviction because we cannot continue to build on the backs of the poor. We have to stimulate our economy, but we need to do it fairly. We need to educate our children, but it needs to be funded fairly. We need to address gun violence, but the criminal justice system needs to be fair. And so I have a very unique vantage point growing up in an urban setting, public schools, grew up in the 64130 zip code, which has been referred to as the murder factory, because there are more people on death row or convicted of murder in the Department of Corrections during that time period than anywhere else in the state. That's not a badge of honor, but I survived in that environment and excelled academically and have professionally. And I'm committed to giving back to create opportunities for other children who are growing up in those same circumstances that may not get the same quality education that I received, that may not have a strong family unit like I grew up in. But I want them to know that anything is possible from where they are, and it does not have to be a life sentence for them that they stay locked into subpar conditions. One, because we transform the communities, but we do that by transforming their minds.